Hi everybody, welcome back to tnoozLIVE at the Aviation Festival, presented by JetBlue Technology Ventures. Talking of which, I have Raj Singh, who's a Managing Director at JetBlue Technology Ventures, I understand on the investment side of the business.
That's
we
right,
had Amy Burr yesterday, who's on the operational side of the business. Raj is the investment guy. And he is joined on the sofa by Robert Carey, who's the Chief Commercial and Strategy Officer for EasyJet. Now how this is going to work is Raj is going to talk to Robert and I'll sort of leap in when appropriate. So Raj, over to you.
Thank you, Martin. Nice to be here.
Thank you.
Robert, thanks very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's always fun to be at the Global Aviation Festival. Let's start off and maybe, I think everybody in aviation has their story about why they're in aviation. Would love to hear yours.
No, look, I'm one of those that got bit by the bug really early in life. So, always loved airplanes and aviation. My favorite thing as a kid was going to tour airports around the world back in the day when you could. And, so from there just kind of got started in the industry. My first job really in the industry was as a travel agent way back when I was in high school. And then joined America West Airlines, then Delta Airlines. Was with McKinsey as a partner there for about 11 years.
Right.
Worked mostly with airlines around the world, 25 so, all over the globe, and then joined EasyJet now almost exactly 1 year ago.
Awesome. And so you probably have a great perspective on strategy and how it applies to aviation versus other large companies out there. How would you define it, and is it in any way different from what you've seen elsewhere?
Yeah, no, airline strategy is always a really interesting thing because if you look at it, there's been numerous different types of business models that have been tried, but at the end of it, you typically see only a few business models that are actually kind of recipes for success in this industry over time. If you think about that and compare it to with where some of the other industries are, especially when you talk about things like disruption, I think we've disrupted ourselves in certain areas, probably other areas we're farther behind, and just the scale of investment required to crack in has, I think, somewhat isolated us at times, but you see events like this and you know that the world is changing.
Yes, and certainly people are trying to disrupt if they can. Our house view is that long haul at least will be very difficult to disrupt. Do you have a view that, do you think that short haul is under threat, and if so, where would you see the threats coming from?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. I think we have a somewhat similar view. I think we would say long haul is going to be harder to disrupt in the short term, but ultimately it's going to get there. And you see things, like some of the new supersonic planes that are getting redeveloped now that could ultimately change the model. But I think short haul, absolutely, there's a lot of room for disruption. And we like to think of ourselves as part of what disrupted short haul 20 years ago when we started, similar to when JetBlue started. But there's the next wave coming, and I think a lot of the technology there and the ways you can really get advantages in the short haul industry are much more applicable.
Right. One of the themes that I've seen at the conference these past few days has been around data and the ability of airlines to use the data that they have in order to be able to improve their services. Yep. How are you guys looking at that?
Yeah, as we've been very public about since Johan joined, we want to be the most data-driven airline in the world. And what that means for us really is, we see fundamentally data of itself is great, but what we want to do is use it to one of three ends, which is quite simply drive higher revenue, better operational performance, and better customer satisfaction.
Right.
That's really where we're aiming, and we see lots of potential applications. We've announced already we signed up very early on Skywise with Airbus as one of the launch partners there, and we're pretty excited about how that could change the maintenance game for us, especially if you think about in short haul. One of the ways low cost really disrupted the model is going into a high number of bases distributed widely. We have 30 bases, Ryanair has 80 plus bases, I think it is now. And in those, when you get a disruption, if you're one of 3 aircraft in a base, that's a huge disruption when you have a tech event. So our ability to predict those things even faster and then work it into our system, that's huge potential in what it can do for us and for our customers. And now we're even taking it into new areas. The area that probably I think has us most excited right now is if you think about European aviation. We've seen in the last 5 years, especially since the EU 261 regulations have come in, combined with, let's say, continued growth in what all of us want to fly, is you're at a tipping point. You saw the number of delays this summer have followed almost an exponential curve. We don't see it getting any better in and of its own. We think the way that we're going to be able to crack that nut to deliver a better product at a much lower cost is going to be via data. And that's where we're really spending our efforts right now.
So, despite the fact that there is so much data available, there are still challenges in terms of not just the analysis, but even in some cases, the ownership of the data itself. We've seen in our industry that the OTAs themselves, it's kind of a bit of a data dam. How are you approaching ensuring that you have the data you need in order to be able to make those decisions?
Yeah, no, it's one of our biggest concerns, and it's tough because if I kind of put my neutral hat on. I can see how when we're working with a partner, there's many instances where, you talk about ancillary revenues. If we share the data and cooperated completely open with each other, we'd probably get to a better answer. At the same time, while we're partners on this, we compete in other areas as well, and we're careful of what we want to give, they're careful of what they want to give, and so finding that right balance is really hard. So I mean, we try to take a fairly firm definition of kind of which data we think we need to own and what things that we think are important to our customers and they don't want shared. Europe also regulates a lot of that for us. But then on top of that, I think we try to we look for opportunities where it can really help both of us to kind of come out of that shell. But it's hard. It's one of the toughest questions we deal with.
It does seem to be difficult. Certainly on our side, we found it actually quite difficult on the talent side as well,
yes.
Finding those people that can help us to unlock the secrets in the data.
No, I think it's kind of funny because my background is industrial engineering and operations research, and airlines are kind of like our dream space to go play, and so you get a lot of people who are excited about coming to work on data in an airline because there's just so many opportunities out there. You go 20 years back, revenue management, crew scheduling, all had a lot of it, and now there's so many new applications. But as you said, I think we're not the only industry that's realizing that, and there's a lot of other uncharted territories out there, and it's a competitive market to get that talent in.
It certainly is. It makes me wish I'd studied that when I was at university. But you referenced cooperation, and I think that in aviation in particular, it's something that's it's almost impossible to move forward without cooperation of the wider ecosystem. Are you seeing anything interesting happening around data as a platform that you would point to and say, this is an advance?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Yes and no, I would say. I mean, I think, interestingly, most of the data sharing that I see going on is quite a bit actually with legacy airlines through old, antiquated systems. You think about things like MIDT or even how they share statistics in the DOT, that kind of data sharing is there. But I think as a low-cost carrier, we don't participate in any of that. We feel that's a lot of our privileged data. I think where we do see some kind of shades of gray, let's call it, where we're starting to see new platforms emerge is really where there's a chance for disruptive technology to come into a space and use it. So, for example, I think both of us have been working with some of the startups in the disruption space like Lumos, et cetera. And that's the kind of application where, yes, are we sharing more data than we might be initially comfortable with on first glance? Yes, but can it get to a much better outcome if we all really participate in these environments? Yes.
Right, no, that makes sense. Johan yesterday in his presentation talked a little bit about some cooperation with Singapore.
Yes.
So given that, how are you now thinking about the way that you'll work with them, and presumably there's a data exchange that will have to underpin that?
Yeah, no, that's actually, when you talk about models of innovation, I think it's one thing that we're kind of excited about because on surface level, we look actually at airlines like JetBlue in the US or Alaska that have really made a product out of partnering with many airlines. And we say, that could be really interesting, and we hear from many airlines. Singapore is one, and I've talked with a number of others since I joined a year ago. And everybody basically sees us flying to the primary airports where they could really take advantage of our customer base. Now, as you said, there's a lot of data that needs to go back and forth if we really want to make it a product for the customer. Our view has been very much rather than what I think is an industry approach, which if you think about our planning cycles as an industry where, you heard I heard the CDO of Lufthansa yesterday say, they're 18 months out planning their schedule, and that's standard for the industry. Now you're going to try to put in that data sooner to try and disrupt the model and get there even faster. That's where there's real potential, but it's taking real change on both our sides. It's a model we don't do, it's a model they don't do.
Right.
And how do we get that bridge there? But rather than maybe spending a year trying to get that perfect, to then put it into our schedule, to get it in 2.5 years. We started worldwide a year ago and we said, let's start with a basic simple product, which is 2 tickets, and put the 2 tickets together, and we'll expand as we go. And I think, we're learning with partners like Singapore now.
Makes sense. As hard as it is to innovate around the data, the hard product is also, if perhaps even more difficult. Are you looking at anything that you would say, look, this is an advance in the actual plane itself that might match the speed at which we're trying to move on the data side?
Yeah, interesting question. I mean, I think one of the things that struck me as I've kind of made the rounds with some of the OEMs in the last year, getting to know kind of what they're thinking is, a little bit as you say, the technology is not nearly as disruptive as you would think it would be potentially at this point. And that's where actually I think, this is my hypothesis, I think some of the disruption will be probably in technologies that you guys are looking at that are going to come in and rapidly accelerate that curve of what we have to think about as an industry. Because I think otherwise we will go down a very incremental type approach.
Right.
What we're doing, I think, in the meantime is we're trying to do our part to help sponsor some of these technologies coming in. We're working with, similar to JetBlue Technology Ventures, we have Founders Factory here in London we're working with, that's looking across the space at different technologies. We're also working with Wright Electric on their electric plane, which they're hoping to bring into the market. We think that's a potential to really change what's going on given all the discussion around sustainability and where aviation's headed.
Yeah, no, I say certainly from our side as well, we believe that electrification is going to be a huge game changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't wait for it to happen, to be honest.
No, I know, exactly. And 10 years sounds a long way away, but it's not that far.
Yeah.
Not that far.
Great.
Okay, I'm just going to leap in at this point because we're getting near the end of our 10 minutes. But electric planes, are they proof of concept? Are they trialed? Are they?
I mean, you guys have seen probably some of the technology too. I'd say they're more in the ideation stage probably still right now. I at least for the scale of a commercial operation. I mean, you've seen some smaller scale stuff, probably, but I know you've probably seen some as well.
I mean, I've seen them flying, but they're not really at the point yet where you could put people into them.
So it's
but
more like big drones rather than small planes. Or
big drones,
probably,
combination hybrids of helicopters and fixed wing. But I think in the next 5 years we should see some interesting things.
Okay, well I'll get back to you on that in 2023 when we're talking about the distribution strategy for the world's first electric airline fleet. So
yes.
Excellent. Probably EasyJet will probably be there somewhere.
We want to lead the way there. So
cool. All right. Well, Robert, Raj, thanks very much for taking the time to join us. This is tnoozLIVE at the Aviation Festival, presented by JetBlue Technology Ventures. I'm Martin Cowan, I'm Editorial Director, and I'll be back shortly. Thank you very much.